Trigger warning. This video contains references to themes of suicide and depression, which some individuals may find distressing.
It was Mum that admitted it. And I remember so before Mum passed, I think it was 2 years before Mum passed. So she came over our place we were living in Favona, and just out of random, we had like a massive fight. She comes back out and she goes, I've just realized something. She goes, okay, well, what did you realize? She goes, I think I was way too hard on you. One being you're the firstborn in New Zealand, you're the youngest. I compounded all of our aspirations on you and I forgot to ask you, what do you want to do? That was a liberating moment when Mum said that. And I'm like, man, you have no idea, Mum, how long I've waited for you to say that. Don't blame your parents for everything that went wrong. Thank them too, because you wouldn't have known any better. Your outlook will determine how you approach things. And if you look at it from a place from trauma, you're not going to fix anything. And that was the realization for me, is that, okay, yeah, Dad and Mum did this, but I'm actually thankful because it's made me aware. If I become a parent, be aware not to do this. Do better, do differently.
Kia ora na katoa, and welcome to Let's Get Pre-Sifik, a podcast focused on providing concepts and tools for the kete, or basket of knowledge, in dealing with suicide prevention through a Pacific lens. My name is Wiriamu, or Will, and I'll be guiding us through open, honest, and sometimes confronting talanoa about improving our mental health. Joseph Paulo works as a community connector for Vision West Community Trust. He's been in the practice of helping people with homelessness, mental health, and hardships since 2009. Joe approaches his work from a place of compassion and curiosity, wanting to understand how people have arrived at his doorstep so he can help them find pathways out of their situation. He has also publicly spoken about his own period of depression in the past.
I hail from two places in Samoa. Dad's from a place called Vaiuso and Waikoloa. That's kind of like the Apia, the city people. And then Mum's from the bush, Vailoa Alepaka, which is about 2 hours from the airport. But that's an interesting question for me because I look at whakapapa differently. My siblings, all 6 of them, born and raised in Samoa, so they came to New Zealand and became residents. But I was born here, so I was a citizen. So I would whakapapa back to Hamoa, being Samoa, but when asked that question, I would often say my tūranga waiwai, my home ground is Aotearoa. And it bottles some people's head. But you're Samoan. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't grow up, living the Samoan way. I had a taste of it growing up, but yeah. And we also have British roots too. The Fraser family. Yeah. I actually have no clue of what that site is. Mum was very closed about it.
Did Mum and Dad teach you the ancient ways? In kind of bite sizes. Mum sheltered me a lot from cultural things. Mum's mindset was, he's the born Kiwi, he's the investment, so we need to make sure that we don't cloud him with too much for Samoa, otherwise he misses out. But in a way, Mum had a balance of, so if I wasn't going to learn some of the practical stuff, like how to hunt a pig and that kind of thing, Mum made sure that at home you weren't allowed to speak English. So, right. Funnily enough, being born here, my first language is Samoan. So I went to primary school and people asked me, what's your name? And I'm like, yes, please. Yes, never speak English. And this is a kid that's born and raised in New Zealand. So, so we had to speak Samoan and only Samoan. I wasn't allowed to speak to any aunties or uncles or cousins, obviously the ones that were my age. Yeah, English, but not around Mum and Dad and the elders. What do you think she was sheltering you from?
Mum would share with me there were stereotypes that she was concerned about. She said, I need you to sound like them so that you can succeed in this world. But if you talk like us, people don't take you serious. And I get it. But then as I got older, like these days, I run into a lot of elderly people in those spaces, and I haven't quite mastered the chiefly language. And then I kind of like, man, Mum, I wish you kind of didn't shelter me, because I would have learnt the language more. I mean, I'm fluent in it now, but these other dynamics of our language that I really kind of wish I could have learnt.
Yeah.
I can do an umu, but like not as easy as my brothers and sisters can. Just Like if you turn the power off, I'll still be like, how do I do that again?
To speak like them almost means there's the system.
Yeah.
Let's call it the Western system.
Yep.
And I do know from the people that have sat in your chair that a challenge that our Pacific people have is they just don't trust that system.
Yep.
Let's talk about going to ask for help. You can do it because you can speak like them.
Yeah.
That's an advantage. That's kind of, I think, one of the tool sets that she's gifted you, right? To be able to talk in the way that the current health system needs you to talk to receive that help.
They had me throughout school, and if me and my sister were the translators. We were going to, so you're looking at kids at 11, 12 going to lawyer meetings, like sitting with Len Brown and trying to understand what does legislation mean? You know, what's a interim visa? What's a 6-month stand down? We're kids, and trying to explain to mum and dad what this means in Samoan. So I think mum and dad had a bit of a selfish reason behind it. Said, oh, we don't want to learn English, so you learn it.
Yeah.
But It was that was the, I think, mum's main drive as well.
Yeah.
You need to be woven into their system.
Did you feel kind of pressure being the translator?
Yep. The analogy that I would apply in this scenario is you go home, you go outside into the society as a kid, and you have these different rules that apply to different games. At home, this is the rule when you're in the Samoan way. Then you go out to work an income, or back then it was called social welfare. I had to play the game of the New Zealand rules and then switch to being Samoan rules and then switch back. And it was a real tricky space because I'm like, if I say something wrong, it could have a really severe impact on mum and dad's position. So definitely it had pressure because for the most part, we were like the weight of the family's success. Like, if you don't say the right thing, we can get deported, Joseph. Oh, I don't know what that means, but okay. And then I see my family get deported. I'm like, and then I'm digging up books. Like I remember 8 and 9, my dyslexia was going crazy, and mum goes, I need you to learn fast. So she grabs all these National Geographic books. She goes, read.
Wow.
So by the time I get in front of these people, I would have these articulate conversations. But then that kind of robbed it because then I was like, oh no, I've gotten to a level where I can have a conversation with the doctor or the lawyer, but then I have to then turn it down to kind of explain to mum. But because I never knew the traditional chiefly language, that was where the stress came from. I was like, I don't know how to explain this to mum. It's not that simple. Like, how do I explain a clause? Mum, paragraph 6, line 2.
Did you ever talk to her about, like, as an adult now?
Yeah.
What did she know about this stuff? Like, did you talk about it?
It was mum that admitted it. And I remember so before mum passed, I think it was 2 years before mum passed. So she came over our place we were living in Favona, and just out of random, we had like a massive fight. She locked us up in the room for like 2 days. Just mum. Anyway, she comes back out and she goes, I've just realized something. I goes, okay, well, what did you realize? She goes, I think I was way too hard on you. One being you're the firstborn in New Zealand, you're the youngest. I compounded all of our aspirations on you, and I forgot to ask you, what do you want to do? That was a liberating moment when mum said that. And I'm like, man, you have no idea, mum, how long I've waited for you to say that. I'm glad that I waited till like 31, but you said it. Yeah. I didn't argue with her, but yeah, she recognized it because she looked at my marriage, she looked at the way we were living, and she said, man, had I asked you what you wanted to do and supported you, you could have been living better.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have had to go through the homeless phase. It's like, yeah, man, but it is what it is, eh?
Do you think kind of you're carrying that around into your early formative years? That kind of, they talk in suicide prevention about we wear a mask. And the mask, it sounds like that you were forced to wear is this, I'm the protector of the family, yet
Yeah, bro.
I wasn't able to take that off and just be me.
Yeah. Oh, man, Pasifika people are the best actors on the planet. Or I think any indigenous people are. Yeah, because I just wanted to be a boy. Wanted to be a little kid. I'll go out and play and get a hiding for it. And I was like, what are you doing hanging out with those Maori kids? I'm like, I don't know. Isn't that what kids do? We play, we have fun, and then I'm expected to be home by this time to do the dishes, cook, clean. I had my grandpa who I had to, I was a caregiver. I was a caregiver for an elderly person.
And how old were you?
I was 11.
Wow.
Yeah, so 11 right through till when he passed. I was 15 when my grandpa passed. So from things, I'm helping him bathe, do his washing, make his breakfast, bring dinner to him. Obviously, the adults would do a lot of the cooking, but I had moments when if they weren't around, that was it. So cleaning out his urine bucket, you know, if he soiled himself, that was me. And so I hear about these home care people and I'm going, I appreciate what you do, because when you're in your 80s and you can't do things like you used to, but it exposed me to adult life a bit too soon, I think.
When we're exposed to things too soon,
Yeah.
you know, there's some things left over from that. There's these traumas that we don't know have an effect.
Yeah.
And what effect do you think that had? It sounds like being the translator, developing the mask, being an expert at litigation at however old, and then taking on these very adult responsibilities before what, the age of 12, something like that?
Pretty much, yeah. I couldn't form long-lasting relationships and I was always scared to commit to a friendship because for most of the part of my young life, we moved all the time. Mum and Dad were on the run from immigration. So I went to a kid named Alex's house, and he had a playhouse at the back, a sand pit, his own little bulldozer, his own little digger, beautiful meals. And I'm going, I do not understand what's going on here. And I got the stuff going on in my mind. I'm like, I don't know how to talk to you about this because all these kids around me, and I grew up early in West Auckland, couldn't resonate with anything that we were going through. Then we went to South Auckland, it was the same thing. My Pasifika people weren't talking. Then I was hanging out with Māoris and they're living this happy life. I'm going, oh, I don't want to talk about this because they might think I'm out the gate or it's weird. It gave me some form of like a selective mutism, if I could put it. I couldn't talk around certain spaces. I think one of the things that I'm being transparent about now is because of mum being such a strong voice and a lot of females being strong in my upbringing, I get very intimidated around women because women have always been the kaha that I grew up around. And so that ripple effect is to this day that even with the people that I work with, I always pause and I'm going, why am I afraid? You know, because I don't know how to talk to them.
Right.
It's always been obey.
The opposites are not being able to talk because you can't get it out.
Yeah.
We do know that the negative outcomes, the bottling up, the steam rising.
Yeah.
How did the steam come out for you?
I started developing early signs of bipolar.
What age?
No, I got diagnosed in my adult life, early adult. So my family don't even know this if they watch this podcast. I was diagnosed at 19 that I had early signs of bipolar. And that developed from the fact that because I couldn't express myself to other people, I was talking to myself a lot. And then even early in my marriage life, its head was popping up. Like I would just snap in a minute. You know, I'd go from happy to deeply depressed, and then I'd be angry, and my mood would fill the room. And that's when that stems from this thing that I grew up with, and I know a lot of Pasifika would relate to this, especially my Samoan people, is that they would say, right or wrong, you keep your mouth quiet, you know. So do as you're told, obey without, protest. That was real challenging. And so when you get to a life where all of a sudden those boundaries are no longer around you, all of a sudden you just want to go, rah, and then you haven't been taught how to regulate that. And so when I had these outbursts, I was toxic, man. And I didn't realize it. I still have elements of that today, bro. Be honest, I can be quite toxic when I don't dial myself back and go, hang on, what's going on? And then I realize someone has said something or done something, looked at me a certain way. I've seen a certain person dress and it triggered something. And I was too busy to kind of realize that a trigger that's been pulled unintentionally and it's causing me to become like this.
How did you know what's the light to follow to find your way through?
What actually made me recognize that I needed help, that something was right, and bless my wife, she gives me permission to, men, if you're listening to this, men, you need to be honest with yourselves. I had a switch because at that time I needed things to be in a certain way. So if you understand, you probably know a lot about bipolar. A lot of them have to have things in a structured way. If you deviate even to some small degree, they can lose the plot. And that kind of happened with me on one particular day. And I lost it and I just yelled at my wife. So my wife suffers from epilepsy. This is about, 9-10 years ago. I yelled at her and I went inside and I said, yeah, I've said my piece. Then I came outside and I found my wife, outside shaking on the ground. And that's when I went, oh my God, I'm a monster. I've become the very thing that I said I don't want to be. And forgive me if I become emotional about it. It's not in a trauma way. It's liberating for me to talk about this because it's something that a lot of us Pasifika really don't want to admit. There's this thing like, don't talk bad about Pasifika. It's embarrassing. Nah, if we're going to look at other ethnic groups and we call out their behaviors, we have to do the same for us. So when I saw my wife on the ground, I remember what she was wearing and she was shaking. She was going into a seizure because she got triggered from me yelling. And I looked at my wife and I went over, knelt over her, bawled my eyes out. And I as soon as she came through, I said, darling, from this day forward, I'm never going to be this monster again. So I stopped pointing the finger outwardly and I started looking internally. And that was probably the scariest part of the journey was I started to identify, holy hecka, I've got some stuff that I haven't confronted. I hadn't confronted my mum about the stuff that I was angry with, or my dad. And then the second point after that was, I'm not trying to sell a video, but there was someone sent me a link, this thing called I Am Not Your Guru by Tony Robinson. And he said, don't blame your parents for everything that went wrong. Thank them too, because you wouldn't have known any better. And I heard that and, a couple of years later, and it helped me develop even further, realizing that your outlook will determine how you approach things. And if you look at it from a place from trauma, you're not going to fix anything. And that was the realization for me is that, okay, yeah, dad and mum did this, but I'm actually thankful because it's made me aware. If I become a parent, be aware not to do this, do better, do differently.
When you had that moment with your wife, what was, for people who are listening and can relate, what were the steps that you took to help manage the healing?
I was very fortunate. I reached out to a good friend of mine who I would say was pretty much a saving grace for me. That they call him Sticks. He connected with me and he goes, "Bro, I'm really concerned with your mental health and I think you have something a little bit of what I have." Those were his words to me. And I was like, okay, can we talk more about this? Because I don't know how to have this conversation about what's happening. And so he remembered something that happened, breakfast with another guy named Henry, we call him Bass. And for the pure sake of a laugh, we did a mock version of a Samoa guy named Kawai on the radio show. And Sticks said, "Do you remember that day when you did an imitation of that, that radio guy?" I was like, "Yeah, I remember." And he goes, "Man, how did you feel when you did that?" I said, "Oh, it's awesome. Mimicry and doing comedy." And I realized I'm a person that likes to laugh, even at some of the most darker situations. I like laughing at it because I look at it and I go, I've survived worse. So I laugh at it. And of course, some people go, that's not very mindful. But I laugh at it because I'm like, hang on, I've survived some pretty crazy stuff. But yeah, he pulled me out and he always pointed me back to my gifts and my talents. So for the first time in my life, I had this individual that came along, well, two of them actually, Henry and Bass and Sticks, that came in, frequently reminded me of, "Bro, you're so talented at this." And us Pasifika people go, "Nah, shut up, man. That's be humble. Don't talk about that stuff." And they kept challenging me. They said, "Cut that out, bro. That's, that's not helping you. You need to see what we see." And in time, that stuff began to permeate. And then I came across a woman named Helen Tua, David's wife. She took me under her wing in 2015, and when we were working at Mercury, and she gave me steps to nurture this thirst for knowledge, this thirst to advance, because I had a chip on my shoulder. I had a point to prove. And so these people that came along the way and pointed out, saying, "Man, that stuff you did as a kid is not a waste. You missed that on your childhood, but you never had a, Super Mario game, the Nintendo 2-button watch my cousins play and cry because I don't have one. But so those guys kind of guided me back to. They fed me stuff that I wasn't used to, and then I got to meet David for the first time, and when he met me, I didn't even have to introduce myself. He looked at me and goes, Paulo. I'm like, well, that's freaky. Obviously Helen had been telling him about me, and he knew who my brother was, and he pulled me aside and goes, my friend, you are much better than you think. He goes, don't you forget that. And he said it to me every time I went to the gym. He knew my head was in the wrong space. But those little injections of the right people, and I think as Pasifika people, or anyone for that matter, we have the right people that come. But when the trauma is so loud, we don't hear it. And so I've only seriously been addressing my mental health issues since 2016, when I hit the bottom. And so from that point, I'm coming to terms with, oh yeah, this is me. If people don't like it, kapai, because I don't know what they're going through.
You mentioned that bottom of the hill. Can you talk us through that just so we can work out, be relatable, and talk about the steps to get back up?
March 17th, 2016. That was my. I'd say that was like my mental funeral. So I was going through all sorts, man. Like, and I want to put this out there, man. Can I just say that a lot of workplaces are toxic, man. Mm-hmm. A lot of corporate leaders, a lot of NGO leaders. It's all good to be out there saying how amazing you are, but you got a lot of people who are hurting internally. And so I was part of a team that we were pressured to do so much. The KPIs were just ridiculous, and we were burning it real quick. And I was probably the one that was, because I was kind of slowly coming to the realization that mental health issues, I didn't know how to deal with myself, right? And so I trusted someone in there with something very sensitive that I was going through, and it got broadcasted throughout the whole entire floor and bottom floor and second floor, and then I sank. I'm like, oh my God, I just trusted you. Something that was so precious to me that I haven't shared with anyone, and you went and made it news, and it put a target on my back. People started looking at me funny, and it was actually in a meeting. I remember what happened. I looked at one of my friends, and because my mind was already sinking, she gave me this one look, and that look was like, you're a disgusting freak. Nobody likes you. So I went home, and I don't even remember how I got home, to be honest, bro. I was such in a dark space. I remember coming through, my phone for some reason rang, and I'd already popped back a whole lot of, things that you shouldn't be swallowing. I was at that point where I was done. I was done being trying to live up to the expectations of not just my parents, but my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They're beautiful people, and they've come to realize that a lot of the stuff they put me under wasn't very nice. Stupid stuff, man. That particular point was, I said, I'm tired. I'm kind of tired of being, having to live up to these expectations, mainly in the internal ones. And then, because as you talked about the mask thing before, and because I was so accustomed to wearing these different faces, and I want to make sure that people don't confuse that with the thing being two-faced, because when you come from an upbringing like me, you have to wear different masks to appease different people.
Yeah.
And because you're so sensitive to not pissing off the wrong person. And so even though the problem of running of immigration was long gone, it was still embedded in my mind. Yeah. So
the stakes were still as high.
It's still as high, So when I mentioned earlier that us Pasifika, when we betray us, we're bad, man. We hold on to it for ages, and we say we're okay, but we'll find different ways to vent about it.
Yes.
And so I went home. I sat in the room and just tired. I was tired of being expected to do so much, being a sole provider. The religious expectations, that stuff was crazy. My mum and dad were on my tail. Friends and family, church culture, it just got too much. And then work just fell apart. Like, work was the place that I considered my safe zone. I was like, this is where I get to shine. And then my vulnerabilities were exposed and taken advantage of. And I came home and I said, nah, I'm done, man. I'm out of here. And then just as I was kind of, bro, I don't know how I should have had my stomach pumped that night, bro. I swallowed so much.
Like what? Pills?
Yeah, bro. Like, you like a whole,
Wow.
shouldn't be laughing about it.
No, but,
yeah.
you know, we're talking
Yeah.
pretty heavy.
So I popped like a whole container back, and I think it would have been like maybe 15, 16, you know, and this is, careful not to say what it is. I don't want to give people ideas. So I remember being very hazed, very faded, and then I'm pretty sure from memory that I actually turned my phone off, and I think this was a divine intervention, because then my phone just started blaring, and I had sent a message to this person. I said, "Hey man, love you. I'm going away for the weekend. You've been a great friend, and I don't think I'll be coming back."
So you were wrapping it up.
I was wrapping it up. So I said, "Man, thank you so much. Love you. I'm leaving." Because I was actually planning to go to Tukawiti that weekend. Lo and behold, what my wife didn't know was I was planning to end myself that night. But I messaged this person, and that person went, "What do you mean you're not coming back?" So she rang my manager. My manager rang his manager. The manager rang the CEO. And then they were trying to ring my phone. They said it kept going to voicemail. And then it rang. And then I had this big anxiety thing. I thought my manager hated my guts. And when he spoke, he said exactly the thing that I've always wanted to hear. And like, I thought that this guy hated me. And he goes, "Bro, I know it can be a real dick to you. You're a big personality. You matter to me, and I need you to be around. Whatever's in your head, because I know stuff, a lot that's going on in your life." But he started feeding me the stuff that I needed to hear. You know, it's the acknowledgement of that I do carry a lot on my shoulders, that I do have a lot going on, and it sucks. And so that was like, my brain was going, hang on a second, this is the guy that, no, wait, this is not, you know, this is not the guy that's supposed to care. This is the guy that's been pressuring me. And I found out some of the stuff that he'd said behind my back. And then I realized the guy that was trying to get rid of me was the guy that rang up and said, "Dude, if I have to come over and slap you over the head myself, how dare you think of something so silly? Be that selfish to yourself." That was the thing that stood out. He never said, "How do you do that to your family?" He goes, "How do you do that to yourself?" And generally we tell people, "Man, well, how do you think about the hurt you're causing other people?" But Tim said, think about the hurt you're causing yourself, bro. Who knows where God's going to take you in the next 10 years? And you want to sacrifice all that because you feel low. Wouldn't let me hang up the phone. He stuck by me. He rang the cops and everything. And just from that conversation, he kept me on the phone. I slowly kind of came right. And then they started creating a support plan for me at work.
How do we talk about that pathway not going that way? What needed to change earlier in the path? What wouldn't have led Joe to that moment that we can help others with the breadcrumbs now?
In any space, bro, integrity. Do the right thing. If you're in and I guess I'm speaking from a work kind of space, or anyone really, if someone brings to your attention that, hey, I'm not feeling too good about something, my firm belief is that person has been brought to you for a reason. And they have trusted you enough to actually talk to you about something because they believe that you can help them be vocal about something that's disturbing them. So I actually shared my hardships with my manager. I talked about it frequently with my other associates and other colleagues. I mean, this is what I'm experiencing. But nobody did anything about it. It's like, "Cool, bro, hang in there, be strong. You'll be okay." It's like, no, I'm drowning. But one of the key things that kind of set me off was, like, I planned it like a week before. It was an All Blacks match it was a Bledisloe match, I think. Was it a March Bledisloe? I messaged my best friend in Australia. He goes, "Bro, I'm feeling really down right now and I'm falling apart. Can I call you?" And he goes, "Oh, you're so annoying. Get lost. I'm trying to watch the All Blacks." Key moments like that where, bless the All Blacks, they've never paid my power bill. Mm-hmm. They've never gave me shopping or paid my rent. I'm like, I know you housed me and I've housed you. So I don't care about the All Blacks. Bro, you're my brother. You're my also. I need you to listen to me. And because he flicked me off like I was an annoyance, that kind of set that pathway of, okay, I'm annoying to everyone. I got to be careful because I'm not a clinician per se, but because I've worked in the kind of the pro bono in the social community workspace from 2009 and then officially in 2020,
I've learned that we as people have a really distorted view of how we deal with things. If someone comes to us with a problem, like, I don't care if you got a game to play. I don't care if you're trying to do a live on TikTok. Stop. Because someone's come to you and they've trusted you with their vulnerability. Do something about it. And I get it. Oh, but it's a scary thing to stand up to family, to stand up to your bosses. But if you don't do anything about it, you leave, someone else is going to fall into the same trap. And that's how that's what I identify as the parts leading up to the downfall or the fall. Is you arrive at that destination because you've tried everything as best as you can. And I don't know if people realize is, like, for example, when people see union members protesting, dude, it takes like 22 steps, 22 different steps before you then go to industrial strike. It's the same with someone that goes into the place of suicide. They, in their mind, have gone through different steps and processes. People say they never reached out to me. Guarantee they did. You just weren't listening. But, that's, I hope that answers the question, but that's for me is when that happens, stop.
I guess we're saying take it a bit more seriously.
Take it, yeah.
It's not just your mate being a dick.
Yeah. I don't make the assumption that, they're just having a moment. Because you won't be saying that when you, like, if that's what you're saying at that moment, don't get up and say, I wish I knew.
And if your friend had said, let's talk, what do you hope that conversation would have been? What would have been a useful one that others can have today? The
way in the conversation would have been held. If my bro just said, hang on, bro, let me just turn this game off. You're more important to me than this game.
Would that have registered you like someone's listening?
Yeah.
Because is that part of it then?
Yeah.
In your mind, no one's listening. So it's back to this voice inside talking.
Exactly. Had he said, so hang on, let me just turn this game off. Where are you? Is it a safe time for me to call you? Can I video call you? And then dismiss the outside thing and be present on the things that matter in front of you. Had my bro done that, I think I wouldn't have gone down that pathway because he was my last line of hope. I reached out to him and he chose the All Blacks. Sally, if you're watching this, I can laugh about it now.
Let's. Well, he's come out from the back now, mate.
Call me during the Black Caps. I'm not going to talk to you.
But how are you today? I mean, is this a constant thing? Are you managing, the things you know about you?
Yeah. I would say that I am amazing at failing. Awesome at failing. Context to that though is that I've come into this space where I've gone, you know what, I've screwed up in this. What can I learn from that? I screwed up in that. What can I learn from that? But I don't look at it from a trauma or a failed state because I'm like, all right, that's exposed vulnerability. Can I throw Goku in there? It's like, Goku takes 3 moves to then figure out how to approach the opponent. And that's how I would approach life now is that I would know, okay, cool, I can do this, and this because I've learned where I couldn't do this, and this.
Yeah.
But I still have my moments. I still have my outburst, except I know where to do it now. And bless my old manager, Will, he said, if you're going to get angry, don't do it around other people. And so that's what I do now. I'll go in the car, go for a drive, and go, let it out and come home. Hi, hun.
Because getting it out.
Yeah, get it because you don't want to bring that home. Like I mean, the last 3 years, I think my years as an assessor, I probably listened to about 1,500 to 2,000 trauma stories. When that stuff hits you, where when you don't realize you haven't addressed it, it bottles up and it goes kaboom. And so like I've learned that before I go home, I take the long way home, and I just let out whatever. Screw you. And people might think that, he's mentally ill. I'm like, nah, it's actually a way of processing it. And now I realize why I see other people yelling in the car and I'm like, but you know what? I'll do it in the beach. I'll go to the water, put my head in the water and I scream into the water, yell it out because I want to make sure that if I go home, that stuff's been pushed out so that an empty best of me can come home. I have this little running joke that I say to parents when I see them arguing with their child. And I go, you do realize that the child's not the fool here. What do you mean? You're arguing with a child over adult concepts and then you get upset at them for not understanding. They're a child. Their reasoning is you're way above. In their life, things are simple. The rules are: I go to bed, I get up, breakfast is on the table, put my school shoes on. The rules are different for a child. And then I see a child getting pummeled because they didn't listen. I look at the parent and I go, it's a child. So yeah, man, let the kid be a kid. Let the teenager be a teenager. You know what? They're going to fall into some bad habits. But if they know that they can fall into bad habits with a safety net, knowing that you're always going to be there with open arms to go, okay, rather than, you stuffed up, rather than, so what did you learn? You know, the next time you go and do that, what are you going to do differently? Because now you're empowering them. You know, come away from calling them stupid. They already know that. The system tells them they're stupid. Too low. The system already tells them, you're from the demographic that per population is highest on the benefit and so forth. But then people don't talk about that there are actually more Europeans on the benefit per population of New Zealand. So that's other group of people that are missing out on the conversation is, what are Pākehā people going through? You know, be vigilant and be conscious of those different things, especially when people are transitioning through different age groups. You know, when you go from intermediate to high school, all of a sudden your first year of high school is, all right, you need to get this, and this to get your UE. I haven't even looked that far. You've already been asked to talk about your future. If you do this, you do this. And Steve Harvey always says that the education is not the most important thing in your life, it's your dream. If you talk to the child about the dream, you will spur them to get the education. And I live by that motto to this day. You know, you can have some of the most whānau stuck in the most darkest places. Bro, when you hear them dream, and you hear what they want, and then you hear the clinician going, you should go do a course in business administration, and be like, Beth, what have you always wanted to do and it's been burning in your mind? I've always wanted to go and do, be a nanny. And he goes, no, you don't want to be a nanny, you want to be a business admin. Now, what does Beth want? So I want to be a nanny, I want to support mums who are like me, solo mums. But to this day, she's a professional nanny, full-time nanny. You know, she's working for a strong firm, training other nannies because the dream has been highlighted. And tell them what they need to do. The same thing needs to be done with each other.
Hearing your story, that's that question you weren't asked.
Yeah.
And of course that makes sense that when you came through that rocky time, that's the question you will ask others.
Yeah.
What's your dream now?
I actually want to give broadcasting a good go now, bro. I missed out as a kid because it is just young and immature, don't know what you're doing. But I've had one consistent goal for a long time now. I want to be on the platform of public speaking and being able to tell my story more. I love guys like Les Brown and John C. Maxwell who articulate their stories. Les Brown I love a lot because he talks about the duality of his identity and, you know, being adopted and stuff, having a twin, all these different things. And I'm going, oh my God, I have a first cousin who I call my twin. And, you know, we're both better at different things. But listening to them openly talk about their hardships and then seeing where they are now because they found ways to get through it. I want to emulate that. I think it's missing from the Pacific Island people. A lot of Pasifika books that are out right now, bro, none of them talk about what goes on behind closed doors. Hey, you talk about the alcohol, the drugs, and the DV. Let's talk about why families are giving too much to the church. I'm not trying to get political here. Why are you having families attending big churches but can't feed their kids? These are important things because our kaupapa as Indigenous people is everybody eats. You know, back home in Samoa, the head chief is eating, but I look around me and going, oh, look, the kids are all eating. He's not getting a better side of the pig. You know, it's you all eat, sleep, and, you know, defecate the same. So
not all ancient traditional things are good for us.
Yeah.
And that some of those things do lead to trauma. Like if you're giving but can't afford for your kids, that leaves a traumatic experience, right?
Yeah, well, that's another interesting position because this whole thing about giving here in New Zealand, bro, that's not even a Samoan thing. I'm talking as a Samoan now. That's not actually a Samoan thing. You get funerals here where people are turning up and waiting for an envelope. They're waiting for a box of corned beef and some lamb and chicken. It's not like that back home, bro. I looked at my mum's funeral. People turned up with food. They were like, hey,
we don't have, or our hands are empty, but we can clean the house, we can vacuum, we can put up the marquee, we can serve all the teas and stuff like that. That something went wrong when it came to New Zealand. There's this whole thing about trying to be the first one who builds a house in Samoa, compete who has the first 4-wheel drive, who has the biggest 4-wheel drive. It's come away from what it's supposed to be. And I think if we go back to that where, okay, someone's, and this is why I love what the Māori people are doing, is that where there's a tangi, that you turn up with hands to help, not the hands with what can I get out of this. And talk, let's talk about the ugly stuff that's going on in our cultures. Let's open up the doors and have these conversations, because this is how we're going to grow. We don't realize that we like watching documentaries. How many documentaries are out there by Stalin and Genghis Khan? 2 of the most evil men to have ever lived. And yet we look and go, look how much we've learned to be better by understanding their story. We have to know that stuff. Let's talk about the immoralities in Samoa. Let's talk about the fact that so many Tongans in Tonga born and raised don't have land. The impact that has mentally, spiritually, it flows into the ones in New Zealand or abroad and so forth. Like, we got to unpack that stuff. That's the only way we can grow. Samoan, but I use the Māori terms resonate with me. Kawe whakamā. If you're in that waka and you're the chief and you don't know how to plug the hole, but you know that kid knows how to do it, be okay to go, okay, boy, you're the chief in this position. Be okay with being vulnerable. It's okay to not be the one that has all the answers. Other people might be better at you at certain things. It doesn't diminish your light. It just means you're not the man for the moment.
Joe, where can people follow you if they want to learn a bit more about your story, or to learn all of the things that we didn't talk about in your story today?
Oh man, I'm kind of rebuilding the whole social media space, but you can find me on TikTok. I'm supposed to be doing these Monday Talanoas every Monday at 7 on TikTok, like a live session for an hour, just talking about mental health and my journey and stuff like that. But you can find me on TikTok, SwitchmanNZ. Don't have to follow me, but you can subscribe.
Bro, I want to say thank you. That was we talked about some heavy stuff, but we did it in a really hopeful way.
Yeah.
So that's the message that I'm feeling now, and just want to thank you again.
No, thank you, bro. It's been, I'm so stoked that this opportunity came by and kind of finally to complete something that I said I was going to do ages ago, and that was to finally meet you.
Yeah.
So I really want to give it back to you, honor you and respect you, bro, because back then you were ahead of your time, Muso. And to see you now still pioneering, thank you. Awesome, thank you for continuing the journey.
Can you tell my wife that?
I just want to say,
her name's Monica.
Monica, this man is amazing. I can tell you right now, back in 2016, everybody wasn't catching it. He was ahead of his time. Only geniuses think ahead of his time. I'm not paid for that, by the way. I genuinely mean that. So, but yeah, ngāmihi aroha kia koe, brother. Whakataiti love. Beautiful moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Cheers, man. Awesome. If you think you or someone you know may be at immediate risk, call 111 or connect to the following services to get help. Text the Need to Talk Helpline on 1737. Call the Depression Helpline on 0800 111 757 or text 4202. If you would like more information on suicide prevention training and education, visit LEVAR on www.leva.co.nz. More support numbers are available in the show's description.